In this episode, you are going to win a copy of Blackstone Fortress. So we are in the process of setting up the pro stores and the visitor centre. More on that over on beastsofwar.com next week. We are busy people. Tomorrow, come across because for Backstagers, we're doing an Armistice Day special for the 100th anniversary of Armistice Day. The guys are actually just working on some introductory demo tables at the moment. So we are opening up OnTableTop to allow more public access into the place. So we've got a pro store and a member suite that we're all putting together at the moment. Some studios are being shifted to elsewhere in the building, and it just means that we are ready to receive you. So we have a 40k demo table because we are determined to recruit as many new gamers as we can. So we're working on one for 40k and we're working on one for Age of Sigmar. You will notice that we go proper old school on our gaming demo boards. We're not using any of this prefabricated stuff. We're going deep and old school, and they're going to look epic. Am I right, gentlemen?
Yes.
You're so moneysupermarket.com.
Make sure I didn't do a belly pop during that. Right. So, some other folk are going to be guiding you through this week in gaming. OnTableTop have teamed up with Games Workshop, Cyanide Studio, and Focus Home Interactive to bring you the very exciting Space Hulk Tactics Hobby Challenge. All you have to do is come across to OnTableTop.com, create a project, anything related to Space Hulk. It could be a story, painting project, or whatever you can imagine. And you could be in with the chance of winning the great Space Hulk Tactics video game and an actual copy of Space Hulk 3rd Edition. We have a load of prizes, a load of categories. Come across and check it out.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Weekender. Today I am joined by Ben on the screen, Jerry in the chair, and it's just the three of us. A nice little cozy one for us this week. So, guys, how's the week in gaming been for you?
Oh, it's been a delight. I've been loving life at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been doing a bit more work on the Africa core,
Mm-hmm.
getting the paint jobs ready so I can do the painting guide for the next part of the Desert Squirrel project.
Okay. Desert Squirrel Project.
Yeah.
That's a new one. Ben, what about yourself, mate?
Yeah, it's been pretty good. Obviously, now I'm back in digital space rather than meat space, as some people know it. But yeah, it's been really cool getting to play some cool board games. Played a game called Concordia earlier in the week, which was really fun. Sort of like set in ancient Rome, where you're sort of playing around with like trading ports and stuff. Very cool, very sort of traditional Euro game. But yeah, it's been cool getting stuck back into some board game stuff. Especially after Essen as well, where we didn't actually get to play that much. I suppose.
Yeah, so. Essen was crazy. All right, well, everybody, we have a jam-packed show for you today. First thing we're going to be talking about is some World War I wargaming that's going to be happening. We have an update for you on the Space Hulk Hobby Challenge, and then we have the usual news, reviews, and what's going on in the world of Kickstarter. So, first up, World War I gaming. So, Jerry, I know you're the history buff, so what exactly is happening with this?
Well, Jim has been rocking through the first couple of parts of his last 100 days campaign, which will obviously gives the background to the end of the First World War. And towards the end of that 5-part set, we'll also be getting how you can recreate some of these games either through tabletop battle games like Flames of War or Hex Counter board games. So yeah, there's about midway through that at the moment. It's good.
All right.
Yeah, it's been cool seeing these come out. As Jerry was saying, the first 2 parts have already gone up, and we'll be talking about it a little bit more in the XLBS tomorrow, which will be really fun. But yeah, as it's coming, up to the Centennial Armistice and stuff like that, it's been really interesting to sort of delve into World War One and find out a bit more about a war that, while massive in scale, no one really knows a lot of the details about because of what we've seen with World War II and kind of how it was Hollywoodized and stuff. A lot more people are very aware of that, and there were a lot more people around, when we were younger, who were still part of that and that experience and could relate back to us, whereas World War One was something maybe that was a little bit more faded into the memory. So yeah, it's been very interesting reading through that and seeing what Jim's been putting together for it.
It is quite strange to see as time moves on and history moves on, just the last of the veterans from wars like that. I mean, like I think if I remember correctly, at the beginning of World War One, I think there were still veterans alive from the American Civil War, if I remember correctly. Just it's weird to see that jump through time of seeing wars getting older and older and older. And I always find it sad whenever, the last of the veterans of any war pass away, because you're losing that touchstone of history. And having someone you can actually talk to that was actually there is something incredibly special.
Yeah, one of the interesting things actually on that note about veterans in the article that Jim put out this week on the Monday, there's a bit at the end where he talks about some of the people who were serving in World War One and then served through to World War Two, and he was talking about a certain building out there in France where a man who'd fought in World War One had written his name, and then done the same underneath again in World War Two, and then at the bottom he'd written that he hoped he would never have to write his name here again, which I thought was really really moving. But yeah.
There are moments like that in any piece of history where you have that little touchstone and it really just digs a hook into your heart and makes you feel for it. So that's I'm excited for this chat tomorrow on the XLBS to see what Jim's thoughts are, what yours are, what John's are. I think we'll maybe even see if we can bring Lloyd in on that one as well. But we'll see what happens. Right, on to the next thing. We have been running a Space Hulk Tactics Hobby Challenge, so we've got a bit of an update for that. We're pulling out some of the different projects that have been running and showing them off this weekend. So, Ben, who do we have first here?
Yeah, sure. So, as Justin was saying, this is the projects that we've been running, sort of like the big hobby challenge for Space Hulk Tactics. Ends on November 24th. So if you're unsure about the end date, make sure to put that in your diary, because that's what we're going to be aiming for. The first one of these is a low-budget Space Hulk board, which was done by the community member known as Inmate 1983, and he's been showing off building up basically a Space Hulk board from scratch. He's using a lot of things like foam, plasticard, all those kind of things like that. All the kind of things you might have found in the kitchen. So you've got straws and tops of bottle caps and all kind of things like that you can sort of mash together into some interesting sort of formations and stuff. And as you go through this project, you see he's done a whole bunch of detail about how he's building together all the corridors and the slightly larger chamber rooms as well. And then the layer on paint on it as well suddenly blends everything together, and it doesn't look like a whole bunch of household items. It suddenly looks like a Space Hulk. It's very cool indeed. So.
Oh, that's very nice. This is something I always find with any hobby project. Until you get that first primed layer down on it, everything's a little bit mishmash, and then just all of a sudden everything just seems to tie in together.
Like where he's got the his 3D board alongside the actual tiles showing what would be the actual 2D version of the thing. It gives you a real idea of sort of the scale he's working on.
Now, I wonder, is he building this modular, or is this a one-off map?
I believe it's in modular sections,
Yeah.
I think, but then it's then plugged together, I think. So, because he's doing separate rooms and corridors and stuff, so.
Very, very cool stuff. Very cool stuff. And we have quite a few of these, don't we, Ben?
Yes, we have quite a few to go through, so we're going to be delving through these and seeing what else every other one else has been doing. So, cool.
All right, well, who was our next one? Something about a Space Hulk story?
Yeah, so the next one is LSR 2590, who's doing something a little bit different. Now, one of the big things we said about our Space Hulk Tactics sort of hobby competition that we're doing here is it doesn't have to be a terrain project, it could be anything. And he's actually been writing a really cool story about that has kind of been redacted by the Inquisition, and it's all about following a whole bunch of Imperial Guardsmen going through a Space Hulk and stuff, as you can see by the image at the top. And he's been going through adding pictures in, expanding on this in different parts, writing the story on as he goes, and it's been really fun to read through this and see how it's all coming together. One of the interesting things I really liked about it is at the very start he's got almost that kind of laid out Vox communication from within the Imperium, which I thought was really cool. So he's really going into the detail to sort of show off the kind of things that might be relayed by messages and stuff in the Imperium. But it was nice to see someone doing something very, very different when it comes to a project for a Space Hulk. So
It's interesting to see someone take such a different take on the idea of this challenge. 'Cause normally whenever people think hobby, they think, oh, I need to build something, I need to paint something, I need to play a game. Actually, just creating a story is actually really cool. And it's one thing I love about 40k is all of the Black Library books and stuff, they're windows into the 40k universe and just give ways to ground yourself in it and actually connect with it, which is, again, very, very cool. Who's next there, Ben?
The next person we're actually going to be looking at is a guy called Mac Daddy, which sounds like a rapper name, and I'm fairly sure it is in some way. But he's put together this really awesome Death Watch style Space Hulk dungeon crawl that he built, which I thought was really cool. So he's done this really interesting, massive board, as you can see here, using a whole bunch of slightly old school elements to it, as well as some of the slightly newer pieces as well that you can see. He's got really fantastic looking sort of 3D levels to everything, which I thought was really cool. You see the amazing vibrant painting that goes into painting the Gene Stealers. You've got Sisters of Battle in there as well, which I thought was fantastic. So yeah, it's sort of showing Space Hulk in a little bit more of its raw form as you might imagine it to be on the tabletop, rather than just the tiles and stuff. So it's been really good seeing people sort of embrace this idea of going 3D rather than just kind of just painting the Marines and sticking them down on the tiles and stuff.
I thought my favorite part of that was the boarding torpedo until I've discovered this luminous golf ball.
I don't know, the boarding torpedo still has it for me. It's a really cool narrative little piece built in there.
Well, it's how everyone is supposed to be deployed. That's why you line up in a row at the start of a Space Hulk game, because you're coming in via boarding torpedo.
Yeah,
so the fact he's made it, it's just delightful.
Yeah, of course. Who else do we have here, Ben?
The next person we're going to be looking at, when my thing loads, is Pathetic Berserker. Who's actually been going old school once again, going back to that sort of goblin green generation that we all know well. And he's been painting up the very classic Gene Stealers from one of the old versions of Space Hulk. As you can see here, they've come across very, very nicely indeed. He's sort of broken this out and sort of been putting together from a box that he had effectively left on the shelf for far too long. But yeah, it's been really interesting seeing people get encouraged to sort of delve back into Space Hulk and paint up the miniatures from it. Because it was one of those games that for a lot of people, maybe they played just in its raw plastic form, but it was really nice to see people sort of getting stuck in and painting them up. You can also see one of the old school Terminators in there as well, from when they were all bunched up and tiny, rather than sort of dynamic and stuff that we see now. But yeah, really cool seeing those old Gene Stealers looking on at a really fantastic paint scheme there, going for that almost like beetle blue mixed with the sort of pink of their fleshy sort of insides and stuff, which I thought was really cool. But yeah, some awesome stuff there on Gene Stealers.
Yeah, I am quite digging that he's green stuffing up some of the ones that have been damaged just from being in the box. Nice little touch to have there. And it does show you that some of the older sculpts still do hold up super, super well.
Yeah. It makes me somewhat worried for my version of Blood Bowl that is sitting somewhere in a cupboard that still has all the old orcs and humans in it, and I'm fairly sure that box has been sort of put on top of by I don't know how many other board games. I hope all the miniatures are okay. They were all kind of flat back in the day, though, weren't they? So
Yeah, they were fairly two-dimensional. You should be fine with, certainly with the Black Orcs, which are more or less carved from a lump of plastic. You'd be grand with those.
Well, I mean, like I recently took all my board games and stuff home from here in the office, and I'm now having it at home. It's sitting there staring at me, saying to me, "Justin, why aren't you painting me? Justin, why aren't you painting me?"
They've sat unpainted for so long, Justin. Come on. You gotta get into it. Yeah.
Well, no, hang on. My Blood Bowl, I did start painting it on a Hobby Night Live. I started painting the Orc team. I think I was a little ambitious, thinking I could do an entire team inside a 3-hour slot. But,
I like your ambition, though. But,
well, I think what I got done that night was the green.
Go big or go home, they say. So they've all gone home then?
Yeah, well, they have all gone home now. Who do we have next, Ben?
So the next person we're going to be talking to is Dr. Tortenkopf, and this is his project that we kind of looked at before on one of our other weekenders and as part of Hobby Hangout as well. And this was him looking to true scale up some Terminators, because the Terminators that exist now, they're big, they're chunky, but they're not quite as big as the Primaris Space Marines that exist now for the Adeptus Astartes.
Yeah.
So he was tinkering away with a little bit of green stuffing and stuff like that to try and bring them to life and sort of build them up a bit more too. And then he's gone through painting them up in the Howling Griffin scheme as well, because it's not just the Blood Angels that go and the Deathwing that go onto Space Hulks, it's also the other chapters as well. So yeah, it's been really cool seeing someone sort of tinkering with the idea of true scale and stuff, which was really fun. So.
Now, see, I do find this a little odd, because I've actually recently listened through the Dark Imperium novel, and you actually hear Rabute Guilliman talking about the Primaris and the fact that in their armor they are actually bigger than Terminators.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
No, neither did I. It's actually a really good listen. I picked it up off Audible. Really great voice actor in it, and just seeing how Guilliman reacts to the Primaris, being a bit more of, oh, these are the new sons, these are the better sons, and
not better.
According to Guilliman, they are.
Yeah, but nobody listens to Rowboat. He doesn't even know how to run a legion. He couldn't run a legion himself, so he took the legions away from proper Primarchs who knew what they were doing because he's crap at his job.
I will organize these things to make them better.
Yeah, I will break it down and pass it off to other people because I can't come. More than 100 people. Oh no, no, sorry, no, I can't do it anymore. And neither can anybody else. No, taking all the toys away from everybody. He's just a spoil sport. It's equivalent of taking his ball and going home. But yeah, there's
the work in this is really nice.
Just even having to split the Terminators, rebuild and raise the torsos and things like that. It's time consuming because if you do it quickly, you're going to end up losing so much detail on it.
Yeah.
So he's really had to go in there with a razor saw and make sure that he's not losing the detail just to expand the height. So yeah, that's
very, very good project. Very cool. Who do we have next, Ben?
So the next person we're going to be looking at is someone who's designed a 3D version of Space Hulk, but in a different way. So it still kind of uses the whole idea of tiles, but it's done it almost like, one of those games of 3D chess that you would have seen in like Star Trek or something.
Yeah.
So this is M3K Man, or Mech Man, I guess would be it, if you were trying to be elite, I suppose. And this is his look at a 3D board, sort of setting it up to be a little bit more of like an alien-infested idea. So it's sort of a derelict spaceship that maybe has had a little bit more of that sort of alien effect to it, where sort of the Xenos have sort of spread out everywhere, and they've sort of had their influence into everything. And as you can see, he's designed these really interesting-looking sort of map tiles, as you can see there, with the grid structure sort of built into it already, which I thought was really good. And as you go through, he's actually laid out the sections so that you can have a look at sort of how it gets played out. He's done these really awesome sort of like mechanical style pillars that hold it all together as well, and sort of give you different access points to the different levels down below, which I thought was really good. And he's throwing in some other styles of Tyranids into his games as well. So instead of it just being the Gene Stealers that are on this Space Hulk, he's also got some of the bigger creatures in there too, which I thought was really, really fun. Because, the Gene Stealers are there to begin with, but then maybe if the hive mind gets nearby, they can sort of implant a lot more of the other sort of Tyranid bioforms into there too, which I thought was really cool. But something a little bit different, and it has that really nice retro look to it again as well. I thought it was really good.
I've just realised I've played this.
Have you? This particular one, or was it one that was brought to QCon?
The first one, the top one, is the one he brought to QCon. This bottom one that he's working on with the new, the more sort of fleshy corridors. That's exciting and new. But the top one, the original old school tiles on the 4D, I have played that.
I was thinking I had seen this at our local con at one point.
No, that'd be it. It'd be him up at QCon rocking it.
Well, we need to get him to bring it down here to the studio so we can get a proper gander at it.
Yeah. That's really cool that he's actually been able to show it off in different ways and sort of get it, presented, and then change things up with the art style as well to sort of provide it with something different too. So, very cool indeed.
Yeah, he's even included the special rules at the bottom there for people to play along at home as well if they want to go that way.
That is a really nice touch. I love it whenever someone does something like that and actually makes it so that it can just be shared with anybody that comes along and sees it. Like I was talking to Lance earlier today, and he had found this absolutely gorgeous bust miniature, and the person who had posted it up didn't say where it was from, didn't say even what its name was. It was just like, here, I've painted a thing. Look at my beautiful thing. You want my thing now? I should never say that.
Not while you're gesturing towards me. No.
Oh, look at them all. Next
save
up,
us, Ben. Save us.
Yeah, save us. Onward. More projects, please.
So the next thing we're going to be looking at is something in a very similar vein, going 3D and sort of playing around with this idea of a Space Hulk done in a alien habitat again. So as you can see here, the guy that's put this project together, which is Meanbone, has been designing some really interesting sort of alien walls, which can be used to create some modular tabletops and stuff for you to play your games in. I really like the idea of this. I love the idea that you can sort of play around with the sort of textures of the walls to try and make it fit your sort of hive fleet of choice. So if you're interested in Leviathan, you do it in a certain color and all that kind of thing as well, which I thought was really cool. But yeah, it's just been really interesting seeing people look at things in a very different way, use lots of different sort of techniques, whereas it might just be 3D printing, might be using foam and card and that kind of thing, or just using sort of materials that are already out there as well that exist from the Games Workshop range too. So we've seen a lot of people playing around with the plastic kits that they do for Necromunda and the like, just to sort of create things that can be slightly different from what you might have seen already when it comes to playing Space Hulk. So
Well,
Those are ancient vac form walls
yes.
Yeah.
from beyond the mist of time.
Yeah, 1993, I think, is the release date of these.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that they're probably no longer available, which is a shame. Which means that's that's probably all he'll ever have of those, considering he's bought both packets the shop have.
If you get into the idea of sort of building your own stuff, sort of what do they call it, molding your own pieces, that could be pretty cool. So get the Lego out and some of that casting material. And you'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, it's again a Space Hulk. Whenever you think Space Hulk, it's not just all Imperial walls. This is an amalgamation of different starships from different species that has basically been turned to wax and went.
Could be. That's one way of looking at it.
What's your way of looking at it?
It's just Space Hulks are only drifting ships. Orc ones can be part of asteroids or something that's been crumpled in the warp, or it could be something that's been infested and gone semi-bio. It's whatever you want to do. So you could have it as clean and as pristine and new as you want, just floating there derelict, or other ones have been rotting away for 200 years.
Yeah, I really like the idea of playing with the idea of there being an alternative enemy for you to fight in a game of Space Hulk. Because obviously a lot of the time we see this idea of gene stealers and the Tyranids being sort of used because they're the deadly, enemy that you face up close.
Yeah.
But imagine if you did something, as you were saying there, with like orcs and their Space Hulks, maybe some Terminators going in to try and reclaim something from the orcs because there's some kind of secret data vault that they haven't quite managed to crack yet or something.
Or a lot of
and
times,
there's sort of like a weird boy there. But,
or a lot of times orcs would use the Space Hulk as essentially attack craft, so they'll aim a Space Hulk somewhere in the right direction and then hope eventually they'll crash into a planet that they can colonize/destroy. So you might want to get in early and fire some thrusters and turn that one away from wherever it's going to impact.
Yeah, that could be very
also,
cool.
That'd be pretty awesome.
It's a brave new world.
You could have a nice little chaos cult in there, maybe there's a demon, imprisoned inside the heart of the Space Hulk, and that's never a good thing if it comes into reality.
Yeah, I'd say that Bloodletters would be a kind of interesting enemy to see running down a corridor towards you. I mean, they're probably not as slicey as a Gene Stealer when it comes to sort of getting through your Terminator armor, but it'd be very cool. So, yeah.
You see, I'm thinking something more Zinchian, so that as you walk down the corridors could close behind you in your scenario. If you can't see the corridor, Lost Patrol style, if you can't see the path disappears and you have to rediscover it. So you could get really lost in like a flowing map of a Space Hulk.
Oh wow, that would be awesome! Yeah, I like the sound of that.
Especially if you had something like a set of cards with the tiles on them. So you shuffle and draw, and you go, I'm putting down a straight corridor.
Yeah,
I'm putting down a very long corridor. I'm putting down a massive room, whatever it happens to be. So it's constantly changing. You never know what's actually going to be out there.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I want that made. Somebody, please.
You should make it, Justin. Make a project.
I'm not an artist, and I don't have time for projects. I have so much else on, and Fallout 76 is about to eat my life.
Fallout.
I'm sorry, I like digital gaming.
Shocking.
Okay, last one I believe then, Ben. What have we got?
Yeah, so the last one is from Blinky465, and this is something a little bit different. This is him playing around with the idea of creating an interactive Space Hulk board that has sort of like an online component to it, or sort of a computer-based component anyway. He's designing the tiles and the miniatures themselves to be put onto an electronic board so that the game can be played by a group of people versus a computer or an AI. So instead of one person having to take control of the gene stealers, the computer reads where your men are and then plays it through a sort of like a program and then decides where the gene stealers spawn and where they attack from, which I thought was really cool. So he's doing a lot of electronic work behind the scenes, creating some light up sections of the board so you can get sort of like lights flickering on as well, which I thought was really good. Obviously, we've seen John doing something a little bit similar with his board out of MDF as well. But I just love the idea that someone is putting together both the idea of a standard board game, but then also bringing in that sort of computer digital aspect to it as well. So it's kind of like a halfway house between a game of Space Hulk and a game of Space Hulk Tactics. I thought it was really cool. So.
Holy crap, this guy has some talent.
He does, yeah.
That is a super clever idea. But it's not just the idea, the actual execution on this. Now, the terrain itself, even without the electronic elements, I mean, like, I would play on that all day.
Yeah. Oh, it's done some beautiful work there, but the idea that anything will work on it as long as you stick a rare earth magnet in its base so that it can pick up where it is.
Super clever.
It's beyond clever. He's just dialed up to 11, really.
Yeah, all the components he's using, all the way that it's been put together looks fantastic. He's still got the gridded base sort of feel to it as well, which I thought was really good. So it's got that playability as well as it just looking really nice. And it'll be really fascinating to see how it comes together with sort of digital component later on and how that works out. Maybe he'll put together a little bit of a showcase of how it plays or something that could be really fun. If there's any way for him to like build a video of it, that could be really cool to see how it sort of plays out in reality. So, yeah,
but he's making his own circuit boards as well.
Yeah,
that is just over the top commitment to doing something super cool.
He's going the whole hog on this. Hopefully he gets it. Hopefully he gets it finished by the end of November. If he doesn't, well, obviously there are a whole bunch of different ways for you to win some prizes in this, and I'm sure we could get a spot prize out to him potentially for this. I think. But,
this guy, I don't know spot prize or anything. I think we should keep it within the remit of what we've already said. But just gorgeous work. Everything is super fantastic. Clean. It's got the nice thematic feel to it. I am just blown away.
It'll be really cool to see how it comes together.
He is a nutter, though.
Yeah,
we do have to, he is a nutter. You are. I'm sorry, mate, but
honestly, that's just commitment to your hobby. Respect.
Oh yeah, no, definitely you should be committed. I'm with you on that one. Yeah, 256 sensors you need to put in for the board. 256. Fair enough. Okay.
Hey, if it's his hobby, if it's what he loves doing, I'm not going to gainsay it, man.
Yeah. Nutter.
All right, so we have one special mention here as well, Ben. What is this one?
Cool, yeah. So as Warren mentioned on a Weekender a couple of weeks ago now, maybe about a month ago now, one of the big things that we're doing as part of this is that you obviously can win a whole bunch of prizes, as well as winning Space Hulk Tactics, the game. You can also win yourself a copy of the Space Hulk itself. So it's like the re-release of the re-release, which came out not too long ago. We got a nice, lovely version of it to send out to somebody who's a good winner. But also, we have the prize from Thomas Menes. And this is an awesome Space Hulk diorama that he has been working on. And we've been very, very lucky to see him building this in our project system. So if you head on over to the link there, you can see that he's been showing off what he's done so far, showing off a fantastic array of plastic work that he's been doing, bringing this really cool looking sort of Space Hulk, Space Wolf style assault together. He's been working away on the sort of main terrain aspect of this, sort of building up the tower that you've got there too. He's got the craft smashing through the wall, and then he's also been working on the Space Wolf commander blaring through the door, bolt guns firing into whatever stands before him with his axe at the ready as well, which I thought was really cool. And as we know, Thomas Menes is a very, very good man at the old sort of like bits bashing and sort of conversion stuff, so I can't wait to see what he does when this is all finished off as well. So.
I have to say, Thomas, anytime I see your work, mate, I'm just blown away. It's just like, how many kits are in this one diorama? I have to wonder. Oh, that's Space Wolf Lord, though.
Yeah.
Did he even green stuffed the flash from the bolter firing?
Yeah, so he's made this properly cinematic as the sort of Terminators are charging down the ramp. This is obviously just going to be the first of many, I don't doubt, charging into this space to try and deal with the Gene Stealer menace. But yeah, as I say, you could win this if you're a very, very lucky person indeed. So keep an eye out and get working. Get your projects in. You still got, I think it's about 3 weeks left on this anyway. So 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that.
Couple of weeks.
2 weeks. That's enough time for you to paint some Terminators or some Gene Stealers and show off how good you are at painting as well. So yeah.
Wow. Well, this is one of those contests where I think everybody is really going for it, and I'm so impressed and so proud of everybody who's taking part. And if you are considering jumping in on it, there is still a couple of weeks. It doesn't have to be anything huge or incredible. Just get in and get involved. Have some fun with it. Who knows? You might win something cool.
Yeah, as I say, we've seen people doing stories. We've seen people painting single miniatures, squads of Terminators or Gene Stealers, massive big terrain projects like this, or just writing stories or doing visual stuff. One of the big things that Warren talked about before was doing the idea of like an audio cue sort of setup for it would be really cool, or like a soundscape. If you're like really interested in doing sort of stuff with sound, you could always build something a little bit like Sirenscape do, where you've got some moody music to go in the background. So sort of tinker away with that. That could be really fun. So yeah.
Well, Space Hulk is one of those atmospheric games. You want something dark.
Well, yeah.
Right, now, before we move on, I have a bit of an announcement that I should have made whenever we first started. We have a prize in this episode. So in this week's show, by commenting on Beast of War Facebook or YouTube, you have the chance of winning a copy of Warhammer Quest Blackstone Fortress, which should be coming out very, very soon. Now, who would want to win that, I wonder?
Everybody.
Most people. Yeah. It's got a guy vaping in it for some unknown reason.
What?
That's one of the models. Vaping away. Hipster.
I've missed this one.
Hipster rogue trader. Vaping away.
This is one thing I always think. With me vaping now, you see, if I was in a sci-fi world, I have to wonder, if I pulled the vape out, would they think I was
you'd be shot
pulling
immediately.
out a weapon?
Yeah. Immediately some Blade Runner would retire you the minute they see that.
All right, let's move on to this week's news, because there's always more cool stuff happening in the industry, always new toys coming out that we all want to see and talk about. So Ben, what's the first thing up here?
Cool. Yeah. So the first piece of news that we're going to be looking at is from the guys at Avalon Hill. Now, towards the end of October, over Halloween, they released Axes and Allies and Zombies, which is their new version of the game, which comes with all the kind of stuff that you would have expected from Axis and Allies. So you get to play as all the different large powers that were playing through World War II. But then the other big twist to this is that there's also going to be zombies involved. So everything is now suddenly a little bit more Weird World War. So as well as having to contend with each other and sort of battling for control of the world as the Allies and the Axis, you're also going to have to be dealing with a zombie plague and a virus that is spreading across the planet. So it's been very interesting to see how it all comes together. From sort of a little bit of early sort of looks at the game and a couple of reviews, people have been saying that the rules for the zombies may not mesh quite well with Axis and Allies at the moment, but this is just an early look at it. So interestingly, it'll be fun to see what happens on Board Game Geek and stuff like that, and see whether or not people come up with some ideas for how people can sort of tweak things. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of plastic in this, which is always fun for any big war game, and of course all the chits and cardboard that you're expecting from something like Axis and Allies too. But yeah, nice to see them doing something with a little bit of a twist. So
Well, I always love it whenever you can throw zombies. Zombies is one of those things you can throw into any game and make it instantly better.
Well,
Give me a game where you couldn't throw in zombies and make it better. I'm challenging you now.
Diplomacy.
yeah.
Zombies and diplomacy. How do you?
You can't, so it would ruin that game immediately because you can't be diplomatic with a zombie.
Yeah, you can. Diplomacy of a shotgun.
No, see, up at that point, that's not diplomacy.
It's my diplomacy.
You've failed. You've lost diplomacy, I'm afraid. But it's like I said, it is interesting adding the zombies to it. It's not just a reskin. So the nice thing about Axis and Allies is it's a relatively simple system. So if it does need some minor tweaking to get it to work well, it's not the biggest problem in the world. They're not have to reread and rewrite screeds of material to get it in there. So
Well, I mean, like whenever you're doing zombies in most genres, there's not much of a mind behind it. You know, different types of horror, there's always a different sort of feel and sort of thought process behind how that's going to act in anything. Zombies, it's just that constant pressure of horror. You know, the undead are coming for you, coming for you, coming for you. Can you hold out? Can you turn the tide? And that makes it less horrifying in a way, if that makes sense.
well, in Axis and Allies, it's very much like fighting against the Russian army.
Mm-hmm.
The minute you go into Karelia, you know, that's what you're going to be facing, all the constant pressure, wave upon wave of you know, stampeding humans.
Yeah.
So it's like an additional Russian army that sometimes the Russians have to face themselves. That's good. I like that.
That's actually kind of nice to see the Russians have to deal with that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like in most games, you see the Russian forces and it's just like masses of everything. Right. Next up, Ben, what do we have?
So next up is something from the author of Frostgrave, Joseph A. McCullen, or McCullough. I think I can't say it. I think it's McCullen. And he has designed a solo uncooperative fantasy skirmish game for you to play with your friends. So obviously Frostgrave came out and there was a whole bunch of ways for you to play it solo and all that kind of thing as well. But he really wanted to delve into the idea of making this like very much a thing. And so with this game, which is available, I think it's on RPG now, right, as sort of like a digital download, and they're kind of working towards a book in the future.
Yes.
This game sees you playing as a bunch of rangers heading out to fight against the shadows and the monsters and do all this kind of stuff behind enemy lines before the monsters can overrun the villages and stuff that exist in this fantasy world. The game has already had quite a good reception from what I've seen on social media. A lot of people saying they've been playing it at clubs and stuff, or they've downloaded it and had a look through the rules as well. It's quite a weighty tone, I believe. So it'd be interesting to see how it all comes together. But it's got all of those kind of things that a lot of people enjoy from their fantasy skirmish games. So you go out and you do your quests and scenarios, you come back and you level up and gain experience and sort of unlock new abilities for your characters, sort of build your warband up, and then head out again to try and fight new monsters as well. But yeah, it's been cool to see someone designing something that's very much focused on the idea of solo play, because you can't always get your gaming group together to play games. So
also, the nice thing about it is, even though it's Rangers, while you have the option to do a Aragon Dunedin style Ranger, you could go, my Ranger's a full plate wearing paladin type of fella, or my Ranger is a bookish magic type or skill based one, and he doesn't really do any fighting at all. He's support for your minions. So you make the fighters in your Ranger party are actually NPCs under your control, while you take a step back and push them on in front, which is always a great way to play. So you can supplement the Rangers, and the Rangers aren't just a guy with a bow and arrow firing all the time. So it's, even though it's called Rangers and they are Rangers, it's not a archetypical Ranger.
So
they're just the guys up front, and
it's more a name of a brotherhood than an actual class type.
So whatever way you want to play or whatever style you prefer, it's doable in that. So that's nice.
Well, for me, if stealth is optional, it's going to be optional. I will kick the door in, big broadsword in hand, come at me, you orcish gits. What? This is how I roleplay.
Very true.
I am as subtle as a brick in mid-flight.
One of the interesting things actually about this is, if you want to find a bit more about like what Jerry was saying there, where you can sort of play your Rangers as different styles of character, you can actually go and look over on his blog, which is linked in that news story, and he's done a couple of sort of posts about the different characters he's built for his games. So you can see a little bit about sort of like how the narrative develops with them, how the characters are created, and of course there's some pretty cool plastic kits out there from Osprey and North Star that you can go and check out to sort of make all your characters with. So, and of course loads of other fantasy Rangers out there too. So it's very cool.
Again, another way to explore cool worlds. That's what role playing is to me. It's just another way to tell stories.
Well,
this is it. This is more RPG than Frostgrave was. Frostgrave was much more of a miniatures game, whereas this uses the same sort of core mechanics, but has a more narrative role play focus to it.
And he said there's lots of plans for him to do a lot more stuff in the future as well, which is really good. As I say, they're planning this idea of a physical book. They're also toying around, well, inside the digital download, you also get the first expansion to it as well. But they're also hopefully planning a lot more stuff in the future when it comes to sort of source books and things to kind of, build on this world that he's created and sort of delve into it in a bit more detail. Because it's quite a dark and gritty world. So it's very cool to see more about it.
Nice. All right, now we have a little bit of news coming out of Relic Blades, Ben. What's going on there?
Cool, yeah. So the guys at Metal King Studio have done a fantastic sort of fantasy adventure skirmish game called Relic Blade, and it was previously quite hard to get hold of, but it's now available in sort of the UK and Europe thanks to a guy named Infamous JT, which is very cool. But this is the news that they're going to be bringing out another Kickstarter campaign to add a few more warbands into the mix, and the first of these is this awesome-looking wilderness group called the Lostwood Enclave. Now, I talked about this week the fact that I'm kind of being drawn to a lot of stuff from Westphalia Miniatures at the minute with their sort of feral elves, and Wartblock have kind of been pushing me that direction as well. But when I saw these and then realised that it was for Relic Blades 2, I was very, very won over. And as you can see, some of the miniatures they've been working on are just stunning. The Wood Elf Pathfinder looks absolutely fantastic. It goes into one of those things that I always really like about skirmish games, where you have to make the models feel dynamic. Because you've got a game with so few miniatures on the table, you've got to make sure that all of them feel like they're doing something in those moments. And so when you see miniatures like this, where you've got like this elf leaping through the woods, firing the bow, it just sort of brings the game to life and has that kind of cinematic feel to it, which I thought was really cool. And it has tree men. There's a tree man. The Avalon Sentinel looks amazing. It looks absolutely cool.
I think Ben's a little bit excited for this one.
Yeah. Even things like the shoulder blade there on the tree man, where it looks like it's actually been made from layers of fungus.
Yeah, that's very, very cool. It's nice to see something that's very different. Whenever you see tree men mostly sculpted and stuff, it's kind of a little bit of a riff on the ants from Lord of the Rings, but this guy feels very different to that, which I'm really digging.
It's definitely going down that idea of the wild wood that we've seen from Games Workshop bring to life with the Sylvaneth and stuff, which I thought was really cool.
Yes.
And so yeah, it's been really cool seeing it to come there. The other warband that they're actually going to be throwing to the mix as well is a bunch of dwarves called the Moldorf Expedition. And this is sort of playing with the idea of dwarves in a nice way. So you've actually got a wizard, a rogue, and a fighter in there, which I thought was really cool. So it's sort of showing off that dwarves aren't just all a bunch of guys in heavy plate armor in mines.
That's wrong. Dwarves don't do magic.
Yes, they
dwarves
do.
hit people.
Yes, they do. Who told you dwarves don't do magic?
I did. My dwarves don't do magic.
Even dwarves in Warhammer, they do use magic. They just make sure it's safe in runes. So
yes. Or if you go far enough back in Warhammer, there were wizards. Dwarven wizards.
Yeah.
I still have some. They were all great. Level 25 dwarven wizards. I'll have 4 of those, please. Say goodbye to your army.
The good old days.
But yeah, sort of going back to Relic Blade just for a second, just in case anyone doesn't know, it's a really cool sort of fantasy skirmish game that kind of goes along the same sort of route as what we're looking at with Rangers of Shadow Deep, where you've got this idea of you playing as a warband and then the other player playing as another warband in this world, and so your group are adventuring out there, sort of trying to like rob ruins and all that kind of thing of their treasure. Where you've got things like pig orcs getting involved with it too, and you've got other kind of crazy undead creatures there as well. So if you haven't looked at Relic Blade, I would highly suggest it because the miniatures look really good, and the rule book actually is great because it's all done in that kind of old school Mordheim fashion where there's loads of stuff happening in the margins, which I always really like. So go and check that out.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And if you're curious, we normally do stop off with these guys whenever we go to events like Gen Con and stuff, and they're there just to see what the latest and greatest is from them. So if you have a look back through some of our con coverage, we should have some videos with them there.
Yeah.
Right. Final bit of news, Ben. What's this one? I think this is the one I like.
Cool, yeah. So the final bit of news comes out of Games Workshop. Now, there was a lot of stuff that happened over last weekend. One of the big things was Blackstone Fortress, but as well as that, they had the Blood and Glory event. And at the Blood and Glory event, they also announced a couple of new things as well. So for Age of Sigmar, they announced that they're going to be doing a Realm of Chaos box, which is called Wrath and Rapture. And it sees 2 of the classic sort of enemies of the Chaos factions, Khorne and Slaanesh, heading off against each other in a new plastic box set. This means that we're also going to be seeing some new miniatures as well. So you get some new plastic flesh hounds, and you also get the new plastic fiends of Slaanesh. And the thing that was really interesting about this is that one of the big things that happened early with the idea of Age of Sigmar was that sort of Slaanesh was kind of pushed to the back because it was a little bit too adult, I suppose, for a lot of people to try and make a game.
Yeah,
and now
a little bit,
the
you say? A little bit?
Yeah. And now suddenly the big slabbering tongue monster with lots of let's just say chest on show here is suddenly back at the fore. So it'll be really interesting to see what the reception is to this, because obviously a lot of people were missing Slaanesh, but then a lot of people were quite happy that they had gone. But yeah, a really cool little plastic set that's coming out for this. So if you want to get yourself stuck into some demon armies, you've got some choices there, which is really cool. Yeah.
Well, I did kind of like the way they handled Slaanesh whenever they retired it for a time. In the actual backstory was that Slaanesh was so sated from actually devouring elvish souls,
pretty much,
to be captured. That was a nice touch for me.
I just assumed that they were going to retire it completely.
So had I.
It just, like I say, it was a bit too adult.
Yeah.
And I think the new kiddie-friendly GW was just going to move away from that altogether.
Well, I do remember stories of fellas who would go to tournaments with Slaaneshi 40k stuff, and if they were playing anyone under 18, they actually had to put like their Land Raider and stuff inside a cardboard box to put it on the table.
You are kidding me.
I kid you not.
I would have asked for my money back. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because obviously there's a lot of lore and stuff sort of building into the background of this, and they've kind of sort of done it in an interesting way. One of the big things, obviously, was that, as you were saying, Jerry, they kind of looked like they were phasing it out and bringing the Horned Rat to be like the other Chaos God, because obviously the Horned Rat is another one of the Chaos Gods, but not in so much like a Prime Meridian sort of style that you get with Slaanesh. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do with it, and hopefully they do more Realm of Chaos boxes too. I'd like to see sort of Zench and Nurgle and all that kind of thing being thrown into the mix too. So yeah.
Now, what else do we have in this story?
So the other news that came out of it, just quickly for Age of Sigmar, is that the next battle tome is going to be Destruction. So if you're a big fan of grots, hopefully that's going to be a big thing. So we get a little bit of Bad Moon Rising out there. Hopefully someone plays some cool music in the background there, but they won't. And then following on from that, we have some cool stuff from Necromunda with House Delaque being sort of added into the mix for anyone who likes to get stuck into stuff happening down in the Underhive. I know that Chris Handley is a big fan. The guy from Darker Days Radio is a big fan of Necromunda and loves his war bands and his crews. So hopefully he's going to be picking up some House Delaque and painting them up. They all look fantastic, and as always, they're in stylish trench coats because you couldn't be Delaque without an amazing trench coat, and they are looking very cool indeed. So
I am digging the sinister look to these guys. I love the one in the center that's just pointing and going, "Oh, you grenade."
So a few of them look like they almost have hair.
Almost.
I don't know where they got that from. They're all genetically as bald as coots.
Yeah. The interesting thing I thought actually about House Delaque as well is that a lot of the stuff from Necromunda is very, very intricate and detailed, which is absolutely fantastic. But these miniatures could actually be a very good starting house for someone to play as, because the actual painting them's quite simple. All you got to do is paint the trench coats and then sort of fill in those details, and suddenly you've got a really nice looking model. A little bit of shading and highlighting, and you've got a very good looking warband very, very quickly. So
yeah, possibly it's an option. What do you think, Jerry?
Certainly,
I know you paint at glacial speed.
I can be terrible when it comes to that. But yeah, it's one of those things. It's a lot easier than something like the Goliath where you've got a ton of flesh on show, certainly.
See, I used to absolutely hate painting skin tones until I discovered, very simple, you block color down, get a wash on it, and just touch it up, leave it be.
Nah, that doesn't work.
It works for me.
Yeah, see, doesn't work for me. That's why it would take so long.
I know, but everybody has their own level of painting. And if you're just starting out, the way I say it is, block it, wash it, tidy it, leave it.
I think it's certainly come on a lot more steps now recently, because the Games Workshop obviously did a lot more of their research into their paint range, and they've got the kind of base colors down now. So a lot of the time when you were painting with a flesh tone, it maybe took a couple of different layers to get it right, especially on an undercoated black miniature. But if you're going
Never
for
undercoat black.
Never undercoat black. I undercoat white now because it's so much easier.
I undercoat in flesh tone. Problem solved.
That is also a way to do it, definitely. So, but yeah, because they've got these base colors out there now, it's a lot easier to get painting done, especially with the Citadel range. But,
yeah. All right, next in the lineup, then we have a Kickstarter, or a couple of Kickstarters to chat about this week. The first of which I am super excited about because I actually got to play it and do a demo game for it.
Right.
So it's Oak and Iron from the guys at Firelock Game. 1/600 scale, I believe, naval combat in the golden age of Seal. This stuff is gorgeous.
Yeah, so they're on Kickstarter right now with their new set, which is in 1/600 scale, as you were saying there. You get to play as all the different sort of nations that you might have seen in Firelock Games' other game, which is called Blood and Plunder, which was the game that we had our theme week of not too long ago. And yeah, it just looks absolutely fantastic. You guys were able to play a little bit of a Let's Play of it, which was really fun to see. Sort of getting stuck into the sort of minutiae of how combat works. I love anything that can kind of bring that sort of Sid Meier's Pirates feel to the tabletop. Obviously, that's a little bit more arcadey. But it's been really fun seeing what people have been doing in this. I love all the action shots that they've actually done for the Kickstarter, where you get to see the little tiny puffs of cotton wool cannon explosions. And I would definitely do that if I was putting together a game of this. But hopefully, yeah, you can sort of talk to Justin a little bit more about how this plays, because it was really interesting seeing it sort of played out in our Let's Play and stuff, which will be linked down below as well. So
yeah, well, I mean, the main mechanics of this game, it's essentially taking naval combat and giving it a light but deep skirmish rule set, if that makes sense. So if we even look on the screen here, you see along the bottom here, you've got your range ruler. It's showing you in sort of a way of how the ranges would work. So at long range, you're just going to be firing your cannons. At closer range, you're going to get your muskets and maybe your cannons on top of that. So it's those overlapping layers of fires, but it's also getting the correct angles onto the ship. So if you can get someone from the front, shoot straight down through and rake the ship, it is going to wreck the ship.
Wreck and rake.
Yeah, and it's just nice to be able to explore more of this. That, and I was talking to the guys, you can actually use this game system to actually have an interplay between high seas campaign adventures and something a little bit closer in on the Blood and Plunder scale of things. So you can have a nice interplay between the two games.
That's very cool.
It's another way for the guys just to explore more of the historical side, which is what they seem to love doing.
Yeah,
I'm really
I mean, the naval combat system for Blood and Plunder is good fun.
Yes.
But recreating that on the tabletop with multiple ships.
They actually have done it.
Oh
at
yeah,
at
but
conventions.
how many people can do it at home? Whereas this is much more feasible.
Very good point.
You know.
Very good point. It's another way to explore the era. And I mean, like, just looking at some of the stuff, if you scroll down here, Jerry, you've got the different sort of markers and stuff. But whenever you go down, they're looking at characters and stuff, and just all the beautiful artwork, and the ships look great as well.
The ships are plastic, are they?
Yeah, I think
believe
that's
so. I believe so. I mean, like, I hooked up with the guys at Gen Con. They had it across here with us and done our demo game. On the way back, I was so sorry to hear this. On the way back to head to Gen Con, the box got crushed, and all the prototypes got crushed, and so they couldn't bring it to Gen Con, and I was so sad for them.
The thing I was actually going to say, sort of going back to what you were talking about in terms of merging the two games together, I love the idea of taking a map of the Caribbean and putting together a massive campaign with a whole bunch of other people at like a club or at a store or something. Imagine if you had all that sort of playing out where you had your sort of ships of the line all together, building up your fleets, and you were taking control of different aspects of the Caribbean and sort of like the top of South America, and playing out the both sort of naval battles out there in the sort of middle of the ocean, but then also the stuff that happens when all your ships get to land and they start to do their boarding actions and all that kind of thing too. You could have a lot of fun with this when it came to a campaign, I think. So,
see, for me, I would love to do that, but I would love to have like a home base, so my own little pirate paradise island.
Oh yeah.
Where I could just like build stuff up, repair my ships, actually do
going straight to privateer. Then you're not going to be Dutch or English or Spanish or anything like that.
Not privateer,
no.
Pirate.
Oh, just full on pirate.
Just full on pirate.
Right.
I'm taking no prisoners. I'm just going in. Do you have something shiny in your holds, Mr. Merchant, sir? Yes, that's wonderful. Guess what? Tax.
Wow.
By the way, you can now sail on safely.
My English will be hunting you down, Justin. We'll get you.
Just right you are. It's piracy on the high seas. It's terrible.
What? Nothing wrong with being a pirate. It's a pirate's life for me. All right. What is our next one, Ben?
So the next game that we're going to be looking up on Kickstarter is from Pencil First Games. And this is a game that Cass had actually talked about in the news a couple of weeks ago now. This is called Skulk Hollow. The idea of this is it's an asymmetrical two-player game where one person takes on the role of one of the Guardians, these huge, monstrous beasts that exist within this fantasy world. And then the other player takes on the role of warriors from the different Foxen clans. So you've got a little bit of sort of anthropomorphic animals in there too. Ding. But yeah, the game is really interesting because on one side you're going to be playing as the Guardians trying to basically wreck everything. You're going to be stomping through the land trying to destroy their castle. And on the other side of things, you've got the Foxen, who are going to be not only running around in the kingdom trying to stop them down there and gather supplies, but then also play out their attacks on the top of the Guardians themselves, sort of clambering all over them, a little bit sort of Attack on Titans, Shadow of the Colossus style, trying to like hack off limbs, stop them from using their fire breath attacks or their big stompy things as well. It also comes with really cool epic meeples as well. So as you scroll through this, you'll hopefully have seen some of the fantastic little tiny Foxen meeples with their little tiny heads, and then also the amazing big meeples that they're using for their monsters as well, which is really cool. As I say, the game comes with a whole bunch of different Guardians in the box. So I believe there's 4 of them in the core box, and then you've got a whole bunch of different Foxen clans for you to play as well. There's loads and loads of room for them to kind of develop this going forward. I'd love to see them come out with lots more Guardians, lots more ideas for the Foxen as well. And just the idea of being able to play not only on the board, but also on the actual monsters themselves, sort of clambering up on top of them, trying to like hack limbs off and stuff is really, really cool. And it kind of plays into that kind of Monster Hunter feel that maybe a lot of people have been experiencing from playing the video games and stuff recently over the last year. So very cool indeed.
Very cool. Now, this one is, of course, funded, and I believe it has like 5 days left. So if you're wanting to jump in on this one, it's one to just very, very quickly pop over and have a look at now before you miss out.
Definitely.
Right, we have one more Kickstarter, Ben. Which one is it?
So the last Kickstarter we're going to be looking at is from the guys at Monolith Edition. Now, over the last couple of sort of months, they've been talking about their new approach to Kickstarter, and they've developed what effectively is going down the route of like a pre-order system with this game for Claustrophobia 1643. Now, they took the old game that was produced that had lots of pre-painted miniatures into it, and they've kind of revamped it. They've added new resin, sort of resin and plastic miniatures into the mix here as well. They've redid all the tiles, they've revamped the rules and all that kind of thing too. But they've designed this Kickstarter to be one that is practically ready to go. All the games have already been made, all the boxes have been packed and everything like that. All you do with this Kickstarter is that you pledge for it and you get it delivered to you. And Kickstarter for them was just a really good way for them to outreach to sort of like the wider gaming world and provide you with a different option for it. So just so you're aware, there's no pledge manager for this. Everything has already designed. This is effectively you jumping in and just basically buying the game straight away. This kind of gives you an added idea of security, which is interesting indeed. So it's been fun to see how this has come together. I mean, the project is funded. So people are clearly excited by the idea of playing more Claustrophobia and getting on board with this idea. This does mean it's limited, however. So I believe there's like 10,000 copies in total. There are still some at the time of recording this. So bear that in mind. But there's about 6 days left on the campaign if you want to get involved. And if there's more sort of need for this game in the future, hopefully they'll be revisiting Kickstarter to try and do a lot more about this as well. But yeah, as I say, it's been really cool seeing this sort of project do something a little bit different when it comes to Kickstarter. And it'll be very cool to see whether or not other companies sort of take their lead on this one in the future. But yeah.
Well, it's one of those things we've talked about before where a lot of companies almost see Kickstarter as a pre-order, and then some companies, once they've done something like Kingdom Death Monster, they physically can't go to retail with it.
So it's too huge.
Going back and doing a Kickstarter specifically to get a reprint done makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
and this is just taking it to that next level. It is just going 10 days, 10,000 copies. Go nuts.
Although there's one thing I do like about this a lot, and that is some Kickstarters you see, if they're not in a really advanced stage where you're maybe waiting, say, 4, 5, 6 months to actually get the final product. Let's say that takes maybe a year and a half to get to you. You're sitting there waiting, and all the hype, all the desire that you had for it can fade a little bit. You know, you'll be sitting there a year and a half later, your pledge turns up, and it's just like, oh, that. Am I still interested in that? You know, which can be a real shame because then you miss out on playing what could be a really amazing game.
Just to let you in actually on, because I realised I didn't actually talk about Claustrophobia itself. It's a game where you're playing as a group of survivors down in the underground tunnels around New Jerusalem, which is a human bastion that has been set up inside the underworld itself. So you're playing as human beings who have gone to New Jerusalem to sort of settle it down there as like a bastion, a bulwark against evil, and now you're having to face off against all the horrible demonic creatures that are down there as well. So it's a game sort of like a little bit of sort of a push between two players. So you've got the one side playing as the humans and the other side playing as the demons. As I've been talking about before as well, all the stuff that's gone into the miniatures for this looks really good. They've really sort of stepped up the game when it comes to the design of the characters. Obviously, you know Monolith from the work that's been got into like Conan and the like as well in the past, so you can kind of think about the quality of those miniatures when it comes to these ones as well. Obviously it's all finished, you can go and check out some unboxings. There's actually some articles that we did on Tabletop where we looked at and talked to the guys from Monolith about this, so you can get, I'll link those down below as well so people can check that out, so you can go and have a look at some, not only an unboxing of the game but also some of the sort of deeper sort of look into the mechanics as well, so you can have a look at that too. But, yeah.
Well, it's an interesting one. I remember seeing they did a huge diorama again at Gen Con. They had a big glass cabinet, and it does look gorgeous. And it looks like there's some interesting mechanics to be had in this game. Right, I think it's time for us to wrap up the show. But we have one last thing to do before we go, which is our community spotlight. So Ben,
yes,
who are the lucky recipients of golden buttons this week?
Cool. So we've got a little bit of sort of Games Workshop edge to this one again this week, but it's mainly because I looked at these and I thought the painting was absolutely fantastic. And the first of these is from Maladrak, who has been painting up 2 of the older Shadespire warbands from Warhammer Underworlds. And the work that's gone into these 2 is absolutely stunning. I love the way that he's been working on these. The first of these is the Stormcast Eternal warband, as you can see there, going with a really deep, rich iron and sort of like feel to the models, which I thought was really good, giving them a lot more weight, giving that kind of like paladin feel to them. But then it's been sort of matched with a really lovely deep red and that lovely green too, which I thought was really good. And I like the eerie glow of the green in the eye sockets as well, which I thought was really cool, sort of giving way to that idea of the Stormcast being a little bit better than the normal humans. I also really liked the basing that had gone into these models, because a lot of the stuff that we see for the world of Warhammer Underworlds and Shadespire has kind of been this sort of desolate, ashy wasteland, because that's effectively what it is. But I love the idea that maybe because of the Stormcast Crash Landing here. They brought a little bit of their Light of Sigmar with them, and maybe these particular Stormcast Eternals have a little bit of the realm of Gyra about them, the realm of life, and so they've brought some of this vegetation back with them wherever they step, which I thought was really cool. And you can also see this being carried over into the Chaos faction as well. So he's also painted up Garrix Reavers here, going with a little bit of a different scheme. Now, one of the big things we normally see with Khorne is just a lot of red all over the place, but he's kind of gone for a little bit more of a muted scheme here, going a little bit more of like a sort of Chaos Undivided look, which I thought was really good. So you've still got the icons sort of showing off that these guys are servants of Khorne, but then they've kind of like looked towards a little bit more of a Norscan warband, which I thought was really, really good too. And yeah, the color choices here are fantastic as well. And obviously the basing too looks really good.
Yeah, very nice stuff. She Inspired one of those games that I do want to have a bit of a closer look at, because it's a very competitive styled game. You know, it's designed to be my brain versus your brain. How well can I use my warband versus yours? So I do want to get a deeper look at it at some point. Next up, Ben, who do we have?
So next up, we've got Firelock22, who's been painting up some amazing Craftworld Eldar, and he's been using a lot of the slightly sort of older models with some of the new ones as well, which I thought was a really good touch. So as you can see there in that big picture there, we're seeing some of the Baeltan sort of Craftworld being brought to life here in their sort of deep greens with that really nice, almost stark white being used against them too, which I thought was really good. You got the really old Guardians in there, which I thought was really cool, sort of being mixed in with some of the new plastic kits for the Dire Avengers as well. I always love seeing Eldar Rangers painted, because they were the sort of set that I really, really enjoyed back in the day when Craftworld Eldar came out as a codex. And I always really wanted to make myself an Alatok, I think that's how you say it, Alatok Craftworld.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been really fun seeing this come together as the Baeltan, because obviously their big thing is all about the Aspect Warriors. And so you can see some of the Swooping Hawks in the background and the Dark Reapers as well. And if you delve into his project later as well, if you want to follow through the links on the show notes, you can have a look at what more some of the other characters he's been painting too. But yeah, as you see some of the close-ups as well, they're just looking fantastic. And I love this idea of sort of mixing the old school and the new together, and using these new painting techniques to bring a project to life, which I thought was really good.
I am quite liking the muted tones that he's using here. Eldar, normally whenever I think Eldar, I'm thinking bright, shiny, too bright, I'm blind.
Depends what you're painting. I mean, that's spot on colours for Baeltan or Baeltan.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a very nice scheme. And who is our last one, Ben?
So the last one is one that I'm sure will appeal very much to Jerry. And this is some work by Ragnar 8, who I really wanted to commend for his work, because these are the first miniatures he has ever painted, I believe. Isn't it, Jerry?
Yeah.
He's a relative newcomer to the
dozen.
world of painting. Yeah. And as you can see here, he's done some amazing work on these. If I was painting for the first time, I couldn't get those shields looking like that. I wouldn't have done that chainmail anywhere as good as that. It would have been mithril silver probably, so it would have looked terribly out of form. And I think the work that he's done on just using just simple base coats and then shading for these has come across really, really nicely indeed. And hopefully he'll be able to get some games of Saga in very soon and show off what he can do on the gameplay side of things as well as the painting. But yeah, I just wanted to give a little bit of like a shout out to Ragnar 8 and be like, well done. It's looking awesome. Fantastic stuff. Keep painting. So yeah, that was really good.
And he's also very engaged on his project. So
yeah,
the first time I seen the project pop up about a week ago or so, he'd done the first ones where these are literally the 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th models I've ever painted.
Yeah.
And it looks like this. Now, well, you know, that's not bad. Have you thought about adding something else to the base? Like little clumps of flowers or a little rock or something. He's going, oh yeah, I thought about that, but I hadn't. I'll go back. I'll do that later. And then he was going, I've done the fur and the fur on the back of one of his herdmen. Yeah, and it was very sort of samey. He went, I dry brushed it, and then once I put the wash on, it all sort of blended together too much. And I was like, okay, well, have you tried maybe doing a heavier dry brush and a lighter color and keeping that more to the bottom, so you've got that gradation from dark to light? He's going, okay, right, I'll give that a go. And it's been that sort of conversation where he's going, I'm new to it, I'm only trying things out, I'm going to try this next. All right, well, that doesn't work. Try this. Okay, I'll give that a shot. Yeah, that worked much better. So it has been great to see him just sort of truck along there and throw out, like I say, the first, his second dozen set of miniatures.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like we've all went through the experience of that whenever we first came to the hobby. I mean, like I still remember just how bad my first ever miniatures were. I think the first Space Marine I ever built, I put the shoulder pads on the wrong way around.
Nice.
So they were sticking out flat.
Like a linebacker.
Yeah. I then also painted my primer on with just some basic Chaos Black. In fact, no, tell a lie. I didn't paint it on with Chaos Black the first time round because I picked up the wrong pot and had black ink that I was trying to prime with.
Nice.
Yeah, that was funny. And then the paint was just thick and horrible and nasty and gold, and it blinded people. And I never want to think of them again.
I always like the idea of doing that thing that a lot of people do on Twitter, where they go back to the first miniature they ever painted and finding one, and then like being like, "This is where I started, and this is where I am now," and sort of seeing the comparison between it. Because I remember my first ever models I painted were a set of Eldar, funnily enough, and I really, really loved the idea of, I think it's Samhan, which like the sort of jet bike based ones.
Yeah.
So I painted them all in Airfix color red, which
Nice.
I painted on far too heavy.
Yeah.
So they just had these horrible gloopy bodies. I painted their faces as just basically my paintbrush going bloop in their face. And then I gave them silver hair because I thought that was cool. And then their
We've all
guns were
been there.
black. Yeah. I'd love silver hair now. That would be fantastic. I'd love to
Yeah,
develop.
I think the first time I tried to do Imperial Guard, they were royal blue with gold trim, and it was horrible.
Enamels. First stuff I ever painted was all done with enamels.
Okay,
And
that
if-
had to be a nightmare.
If I could find them now, I could probably chip the enamel off and there'd be a perfectly preserved miniature in the middle of that blob. But
Yeah. In fact, there's one for you, everybody. In the
I was
comments
gonna
below,
say, yeah.
hunt out your first ever miniature if you have it and post a picture. I'll see if I can
That'd
hunt
be
out one
awesome.
of mine and I'll get it put into the show notes of this.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go and dig out those Eldar. They must be somewhere. I think they're in my parents' house.
I think the only one of my original minis I have is the old metal Vendread sitting about somewhere. I'll see if I can hunt him out. He looks awful.
nice.
Right, I think that is us for this week on The Weekender. Everybody, hopefully you have enjoyed the show, us rambling and sitting and telling you what's been going on in the world of gaming. One last announcement before we go. We have a competition winner from last week, which is Iron Shield from Beasts of War. If you're wondering about any of the previous competitions that we have ran on Beasts of War, make sure and come across to the main website where we do have a prize list, which is listing prizes and who has won it. And if you're a winner, get your prize claim in by the Contact Us form. And I miss Ben.
Just to remind them that Iron Shield, you won a copy of Kill Team Rogue Trader. So
Yes.
fantastic. And of course, we've got the competition from this week, which is to win a copy of Warhammer Quest Blackstone Fortress, which we talked about on last week's Weekender and sort of delved into that in a bit more detail as well, which is really cool. So if you want to get your hands on that one, comment down below. So
All right, well, everybody, we will wrap up for the day. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Get those comments in below. You could win something nice or just kick off a really good conversation. Don't forget to check out the Space Hulk Tactics
Spalk.
challenge.
Spalk.
Spalk.
We will move on, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow where we will be back for the XLBS, where we'll be joined by Jerry, John, myself, possibly Lloyd, and the historical editor Jim to talk all things World War One. We will see you very soon.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now, and be sure to check out beastsofwar.com for the latest gaming news and gaming let's plays. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.